Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. We are the Bella Lost Souls podcast. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. This is episode 213. We are going to be talking about Tyranids today. I'm joined today by Ricky Addington and Justin Troop.
Dark Angels, Thunderhawks, my new favorite thing.
Yep, I agree.
And Chris Morgan.
You wouldn't like me when I'm hungry.
As very appropriate for we are going to be talking about the great devourers here on this show with the Tyranids. Of course, you're going to be hearing this for release on Saturday. That means that the Codex is up for pre-order, and there's some things in here that we're going to kind of have to get through together. I just want to say that there's been some point increases. There's also some new things on units, and we'll talk about some of those because I think it's gonna be exciting with the stuff, because some of the cool things in this book or on the unit specifically aren't just like a blatant power buff. It's like a skill tester, something that if you do really well, you're going to get an advantage in the game. And I like seeing that kind of stuff in there. Stuff that if you could really outplay your opponent by doing.
I'm very interested in checking it out. Of course, we've been keeping track of all of the Games Workshop teases and releases as well, but a lot of that stuff, you kind of see it in a vacuum, but to be able to kind of catch the nuance, like that's the benefit of this kind of show, and that's kind of what I'm really excited about
There's a lot
tonight.
going on with the codexes. I mean, as far as all the codexes. Now, I want to point out this is the 8th codex, and we've been soft promised 10 codexes before the end of the year. I mean, that was in a blog post on the Warhammer community site. You know, of course, it could be subject to change, but this is the 8th one if my math is correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
You're right. There's been 4 Imperium and 4 non-Imperium as of this one.
You wouldn't know that if you listen to the Xenos players.
Well, I mean, 2 of those non-Imperium are Xenos, and 2 of them are Chaos. So, but I mean, Chaos may as well be Xenos in my mind, anyways.
Oh,
You watch your mouth.
that's right. And being an Eldar player, I've been doing a lot of churning on the lists that are out, and I think we're going to see. And I don't know if you follow me on Twitter, but you noticed that I got the Aspect Warrior dice. I feel like I'll be able to roll a little bit better if I roll the dice to the shrine.
I did order some Fire Dragon ones for my dad.
Yeah, those are my favorite, I think, as far as just the look of them.
They're nice. I like the that blue though, and the swooping hawks. Kind of.
Yeah,
I love that color.
Yeah, that's a good color. So as I mentioned, this episode 213. Recently, I got asked how people can support the show, and we don't talk about that a lot, so I'll mention it here briefly. One of the ways to support the show is just simply, liking the post after we make them and giving us a 5-star rating in iTunes. That's the kind of stuff that you can do that's just like absolutely free. Just support the show that way by giving us 5-star ratings and liking or sharing the post either on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, just to kind of help boost the signal. We never get tired of seeing that. And we reset the feed a couple of years ago, so a lot of the early reviews and ratings and stuff from iTunes went away, so everything's fresh. So if you did it like a long time ago, we really like if you give us a 5-star rating again to help put the signal out there. It really helps the show grow. That's one of the ways to show support.
It helps us pass up some of the knitting podcasts in the hobby section.
You'll never beat them. They're so good. You'll never beat them.
They really are.
I think that, those knitting podcasts in the context of this show, they're pretty much spine fists, right? In terms of their ratings and the competition.
Those old ladies they're so passionate and they're so uplifting and positive about their hobby. You can't beat them. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to try to beat them. I just
want
to compete. I just want to hang. I just want to be in the same rarefied air. That's all I want.
Oh my gosh, they have the best names. Forge the Narrative is a terrible name compared.
Nancy Two Needles.
Oh my gosh, you're not going to beat that. You're not going to beat it.
No, but please give us a little bit of help boost the signal that way with liking the post and the ratings. And if you want to support the show in a different way, we do have t-shirts for sale. We have some limited stock of t-shirts for sale on our website, forgethenarrative.net.
And I don't want to, talk out of turn or anything, but if you see me in a restaurant and you slide a briefcase full of Sour Patch Kids across the table, that would be an excellent way to support the show.
There are many ways you can support the show, but that may be one of them. Next week, we have Warzone Atlanta. This is the event that we run here in Atlanta, where we are sold out, capacity crowd at 110 players. We have some Friday night events going on. There's the Friday Night Fracas, which is a 3-man team battle, and we have an Apocalypse battle, which is more of a narrative, storyline-driven game run by an amazing guy, friend of the show, Alec Peters. Then on the Friday and Saturday is the main event, where us and the general staff partner together to run in my opinion, one of my favorite events and a great grand tournament, 2-day 40k event. We will be live streaming during that. It'll probably be me and whoever I can wrangle with me to get on the feeds. It should be a fun time.
My normal strategy of taking a terrible army so that I lose within 2 turns, so I have more time to mingle, that will hopefully play out as again this year.
You're well on your way.
I'm doing everything.
By mingle, Ricky really means adult beverages.
Get drunk and cry underneath the tables. Yeah.
For paint judging and things like that, we're opening up the hall on Friday night. Obviously, for the other events, people can get judged early on Friday, which will give us more opportunity to post pictures and stuff to our Facebook page. So follow us if you haven't already to see some of the stuff from the event, and then maybe tune in for some of the streams if you get time.
And binge listen to the last 15 minutes of every episode for the last 30, so you can get a better paint score.
Better paint score, right? That's a finishing move segment.
That's a great thing to do while you're hobbying.
Agreed. Let's talk about why we're going to be talking about that, and that is the Tyranids. The Tyranid Swarm is invading Warhammer 40k 8th edition.
Rise of the Gribblies.
Are they still like fresh with the Blood Angel's blood in their mouth at this point?
I didn't get that far in the book as far as that.
You guys have got to hear this. Like, I asked Paul a very specific lore question when I heard he had the book.
Even relevant to my interest. And
yes.
I was like, look, you should know I just went straight for the points. Look, we're about that lore later.
I am disappointed.
No, no disparaging any of the lore writers and the backgrounders for the Codex, because this is the hardback. It's the same type of format that we've come to appreciate. There's some awesome painted models. There's examples of all the different Hive fleets, and there's good 80, probably 60, 70 pages of context for the army itself. And then you get into the rest of the army. And I'm going to go right to the abilities. The Synapse ability, as far as NIDs go in the index, I felt that on the point game, they kind of struggled a little bit. On the power level side of things, if you play power level, then I think the NIDs have been a pretty good force as far as competitive goes. But I'll be honest, I didn't have a big handle on their overall rules. So some of the nuances of things like Synapse, I'm just going to read it here, and then we can discuss maybe how if it's different at all. With Synapse, the Hive Fleet unit automatically pass morale test if they're within 12 inches of any friendly Hive Fleet unit with this ability. Now, we know the Hive Fleet is going to work similar to things like chapter tactics or the craft world attributes. You're going to be able to pick an allegiance with your Tyranids that is going to give you some special rules.
I know that Synapse has always been kind of the make or break attribute for the Tyranid Codex. 7th edition, of course. They were still using the 6th edition book, I think, for most of 7th. But 6th edition is where instinctive behavior got really crazy, and people were really unhappy about that. Now I feel like with the way Synapse and instinctive behavior work, it's going to be more make and less break for Tyranid armies.
Well, we know with morale now, you remove whole models. So in an army that potentially has a bunch of multi-wound models on the table, then being able to automatically pass morale, that could be strong.
Yeah, it's going to make a big difference for the Tyranid warriors, the Ravagers, and things of that nature. Not that they're the most competitive choices, but if you're running them, you're going to hate to lose that model.
Well, there's going to be a theme in this book, and I know this has been something that's been present in Tyranids in the past, but there's like a big bug version of a creature, and then it has the little bugs kind of in its genome or whatever. Its species, it's probably the better way to describe it. And so the bigger ones are going to buff the smaller ones. So it's conceivable that the Tyranid, you take a Tyranid Prime and you may be able to function better with Tyranid warriors around them. And we'll talk about that. So, that could be one avenue for build that people go with. But that theme of bigger bugs, buffing out, strengthening the smaller version of them, of those type of, that linked family is going to be present in the book itself.
You're talking about things like, you said the Tyranid Prime. There's the Neurothrope, I think, is another one.
That's going to buff. Yes, exactly right.
Zoanthropes.
And then the Termagants going to do some gaunt stuff, and whatever. We'll get there in just one minute or two. The instinctive behavior, since you brought that up, unless a Hive Fleet unit with this ability is within 24 inches of any friendly Hive Fleet Synapse unit, you must subtract 1 from any hit rolls made for it when shooting any target other than the nearest visible enemy unit. and you must subtract 2 from its charge roll if it declares a charge against any unit other than the nearest enemy unit. This could have an effect, especially on a strategy if you just must get something that's not the closest enemy unit, but it's not crippling and it's not this cumbersome, do I lurk, do I feed, do I whatever. It's all its rules are kind of spelled out there.
Well, and it's 24 inches. You're outside of synapse past 12, according to the rule that you just read. So you really have to be out there. You have to be in kind of like the no man's land of whatever the zone of control is.
Yeah, that's even 48 inches, by the way, if you're like measuring from front to back. I mean, that's a radius. You're looking at 24 inches from the model. That's potentially a large area.
It's going to be really tough to get people outside that distance, I think, to get the bugs that way.
I'll find a way. Where there's a will.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, you're looking at 24 inches from a point, and so yeah, we play on a 6 foot wide table.
I just like that it's not auto lose for Tyranid players if their synapse creature gets killed. It's like if they get out of synapse for some reason, or they lose all their synapse creatures, their entire army isn't just completely boned. They get they're penalized a little, but it's not completely debilitating. They're not eating each other. They're not just walking off the table on their own.
Well, yeah, it's not a weird situation anymore, and the onus is really not on your opponent to figure out if you're doing it wrong or right. It's really straightforward now at this point, I think, what happens. And that in itself is a benefit, but the fact that it's limited to only really affecting if you don't want to charge or shoot the closest thing, like you can still charge and or shoot the closest thing, unimpeded.
Yeah, to me that's very instinctive. They're going to go towards the closest thing. They're not going to turn around and eat their similar, their selves. They're not going to sit there and eat their buddy. That never made sense to me. Like, you're telling me that you are this superior genetic thing that's just designed to kill all biomass. Oh, let me eat myself.
It is a bug eat bug world out there.
Yeah, never.
It actually makes perfect sense to me. But at the same time, it was a salty moment. Them were salty bugs that they were eating.
So the next ability, though, is Shadow of the Warp. And this is good. This is pretty good. Enemy psychers must subtract 1 from any psychic test they make if they are within 18 inches of any enemy units with this ability. Tyranid psychers are not affected.
That's a big bubble.
Yeah, but you say enemy psychers and then goes so far as to say Tyranids aren't affected. So, like, if you're playing against Tyranids.
That's pretty neat. There was a community post today about one of the Warlord traits, and I think when you combo that with the Warlord trait, basically if you fail casting, you start taking mortal wounds. That's a good combo to think about.
You're talking about the community post. It's a Warlord trait that if an enemy psyker fails a psychic test, then they take D3 mortal wounds.
Right.
Soul Hunger, Kronos, Soul Hunger.
Kronos, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you start thinking about that and you can combo that, let's say you're at a GT or an RTT, what are you more likely going to end up seeing right now? Demons, right? Or something that is casting.
Well,
the
Brimstones, only casting on 1 die. They do fail.
Yeah, they're going to fail a lot.
Yeah, so I really think that this is kind of a meta shaker in a way. That's going to help kind of neuter some of those lists a little bit and make them play differently. So I really like this combo and these rules.
There are things. Not everything has Shadow of the Warp, obviously, but a lot of stuff does. Even like the Broodlord and the Hive Tyrant, they all have Shadow of the Warp.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great feature on the Flyrant.
Well, even things that can get closer, and the first thing here in the book is the Broodlord. And the Broodlord he's a psyker, which I think is pretty cool. And they get to do 1 psychic power in Psyche phase. And it can be smite, and it's an unneutered smite. It's just it knows smite power and 1 psychic power from the Hive Mind discipline.
The Broodlord, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Genestealer on steroids?
That's the big Genestealer.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And I like him, and we'll talk about this as we move to some of the bigger stuff. This Broodlord is wound 6, and he's a character, so that puts him in that you can't target me category.
John Cena.
Well, and 6 wounds on what is essentially an infantry character is not terrible at all.
Well, he was a monster as far as like attacks and stuff, and
Yeah, it's
if
like
his profile's the same, then I mean he's a
6 attacks, leadership 10, toughness 5 with a 4+ armor save and a 5+ invulnerable save with Synapse and Shout of the Warp. Swift and deadly. Also, the model can charge even if it advances during its turn.
Bro, seriously, that thing wipes out units.
He needs to calm down. He just needs to calm.
It gets worse. He's
too brooding.
Brood telepathy. You can add 1 to hit rolls in the fight phase for Hive Fleet Genestealer units within 6 inches of any friendly Hive Fleet Broodlord. He's a Genestealer. And he hits on a 2+ though. So I mean, you're only going to be
but who cares? It's there's going to be those units out there that give you a -1 to hit.
Yep, so. That's just insurance against those fools.
Get some.
No, I mean I think it's strong, and the Genestealers. We'll talk. They did get that's one of the units I was talking about specifically. They get like a skill buff. Like if you get good at using what their new ability is, then you're really going to wreck some people.
Elaborate for me.
We'll get there. It's
You're just teasing.
Let me tease one more thing. In the middle of this show, Chris and I did an interview with Guy Haley. We're going to play that.
It's just mean.
This is like a audio buffet for all of you Tyranid fans out there.
This show is going to be long, but just know if you look at the time and like, oh my goodness, this is I got 3 commutes to listen to this one. No, the middle is worth it because it's an interview with an author who I had a really great time talking with him.
Yeah, the dude, he has a blistering writing pace and he has a blistering talking pace. The guy is always on the move, and it makes talking to him like real fun and exciting. Just super engaging guy to talk to.
Hopefully that translates for sure. The monstrous rending claws on the Broodlord. For each, you can reroll failed wound rolls for this weapon, which is he's only strength 5. And the claws are the strength of the user, so that reroll is going to come in handy. In addition, each time you make a wound roll of a 6+, the hit is resolved with an AP of -6 and a damage of 3.
God.
Yeah, I remember that. I got the receiving end of a Broodlord charge on Mephiston a couple weeks back. Luckily, Mephiston's a beast and he survived, but I was biting my chitinous claws on my hands there.
-6.
That's insane.
I don't know what does stand up. Like, what would you even need the -6 for?
No, that right there is just somebody just making a point. That's all that is. It's like, you better have an invul save because nothing's stopping this one.
I guess you could stack up some multiple -1. I don't know. Who knows?
I haven't seen anything out there that gives a buff to like your.
Yeah, there's some things that give you like the Eldar power gives you a +1 to your armor save.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I shouldn't say +1 to saving throws. Also, it would be invul or armor saves. And I have to imagine that they're in the scope of everything that will be in 40k that we'll see multiple things like that.
Yeah. I don't know why I had it in my head. Like, yeah, I was imagining that completely different in my head. I think I was just like, I guess the -6 just like completely boggled my mind.
Just blew it.
Like, oh well. No, Ricky just lost his mind there for a second.
The damage is D3 normally, but if you roll that 6+, it's a 3 damage, and that is not insignificant when you're looking at 6 base attacks.
How many points is this guy?
1 million.
No, I don't think he's 1 million points. The Broodlord is 162 points.
He's a little beefy.
That's without war gear. Now, what was he in the index?
He was 162. Does not include war gear. He had monstrous rending claws, which that helps. 0. So 162.
Oh, so he's 160. Okay, so he is 160. So he's the same. All right. That is good to know. I think he's a strong unit choice, especially being able to be hidden within other units, whatever. He is a Genestealer, and that's important. We'll get there. The Hive Tyrant is strong. With the Hive Tyrant being 12 wounds, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like it's a target. They do have a 4+ invulnerable save, and that is not insignificant, and a 3+ armor save. And they can cast 2 psychic powers. So they are, they're good, in my opinion. They are not bad, but I don't know. I feel like that 12 wounds on these guys might be a little bit of a liability.
What I like about them, so far as the changes are concerned, was the increase to their toughness. going from 6 to 7.
Tough to 7.
Now,
yep.
For a lot of like the strength 4 weapons, people are going to be like, yeah, whatever, it's still 5s. But stuff like assault cannons and the mid strength weaponry, all of a sudden is going to have a harder time, which I think is going to be a real boon to their survivability. Of course, the +1 to the invulnerable save accomplishes that same thing. 2 little nuanced changes that I think you're going to have, like say, I'm just going to throw out a random percentage, but let's call it a 25% increase in survivability for a model like the Hive Tyrant. I think that's important. I think that's a good change where they didn't lower the wounds.
You can put the wings on it still. I think that's we can expect that. So if it does have, since it has the shot of the warp, you could push it up to hinder some folks because he's not hiding from being shot at anyway. So you might as well get some benefit out of their auras.
Now, I'm interested in seeing how some of the combos with the relics and the Hive Tyrants work. A winged Hive Tyrant with a relic that lets him shoot a weapon that ignores invulnerable save and is like 2 damage. I can imagine some really effective character sniping from that. Or, Dark Eldar Archons, watch out.
The Swarmlord is something, I think has been real popular with the choice before. It's still a combat monster. He has what's called a blade parry. Similar stats. He got 12 wounds, toughness 7. Has the bone sabers, which are strength of the user, which the strength is something that degrades as you wound it, but at full capacity, it's strength 8 with 6 attacks. And the blade parry is add 1 to the Swarmlord's invulnerable save against wounds caused by melee weapons. So he's got a 4+ invulnerable save that goes to a 3+ in close combat.
That's not shabby.
I feel like he's going to be a bit of a combat beast. You get him in, he is going to wreck face.
I feel like I'm going to shoot him. That's the guy I'm going to shoot first.
He has the Hive Commander. It has the Hive Commander ability. In each of your shooting phases, you can pick one friendly Hive Fleet unit within 6 inches of the Swarmlord. That unit can move and advance if you wish, as if it were the movement phase instead of shooting.
And that's not a psychic power. That's not something you can stop. That's
it just works.
He points one of his big sushi knives and says, "Over there."
And
that's a huge slingshot.
It's just a Hive Fleet unit, so this could be some Genestealers, it could be Raveners, it could be something that you, like a Genestealer, as we just talked about, the Broodlord can advance and charge.
Can he use it on himself?
He is a Hive.
He's a Hive
friendly.
Yeah.
So,
but he doesn't have the ability to charge after he advances.
But he could move twice.
Yeah, he can.
So he's in your face. He has to survive 1 round of shooting.
Well, let me say he doesn't have the innate ability to be able to advance and charge. There may be buffs later on in the book that give that ability, but on his data slate, he can't do that. But he can make himself move twice, and advance twice.
Well, that's fun.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is very relevant in the context of Hive Tyrants. Tyrant Guard, have they had any changes? Are they any better?
They work very similarly. If you can, we'll get there in just a minute, if that's okay. The will of the Hive Mind is also on the Swarmlord, as the range of the Swarmlord's synapse ability is 18 rather than 12.
That's strong. I like that.
Yeah, and that's the same on a Hive Tyrant also. I apologize if you hear the pages turning. I wanted to make sure before I said it.
No, it makes sense.
Tyranid Prime, that's the big warrior that it has 6 wounds, toughness 5, and its alpha warrior ability is you can add 1 to hit rolls for all Hive Fleet Tyranid warrior units that are within 6 inches of any friendly Hive Fleat Tyranid Prime.
Now, do those guys hit on 3s or 4s? I feel like it's 4s.
They hit on
normally
2. The Tyranid. Are you talking about the Prime or the
No, I'm talking about the warriors, the guys that he's buffing.
Yeah.
They did hit on 3.
They hit on 4. Oh, sorry. No, sorry. In weapon skill, they hit on 3s.
Yeah, BS.
So the BS is 4+.
Yeah.
So now they're hitting more reliably as well. So that's good.
Yeah, but this is important that it's add 1 to all hit rolls, not just melee. It's weapon skill and BS.
Yep.
Versatile, so that's good.
Sometimes I would prefer that over the a reroll 1s.
The Tyranid Warriors come stock with Scything Talons and a Devourer. So, they have a melee weapon and a shooting weapon. You could get value even out of a stock Tyranid Warrior.
Yeah, I'm still a fan of the all or nothing mentality with them.
You mean like double arming them with weapons of a single type, either melee or close combat?
Yeah. Go one way or the other. If you're going to shoot, go all out shooting. If you're going to attack, go all out attacking.
Yeah, any model may replaces Devourer with 1 weapon from the basic bioweapon or melee bioweapons list, and then any model may replaces Scything Talons with 1 weapon from the melee bioweapons list. So you've got to keep a pair of Talons, and then you get to kind of sub out the gun, or give them 2 Talons, or two melee weapons.
add a caveat to Troop's statement there. I do think that committing is good, but I also think that committing in the context of the Hive Fleet rules is going to be important. I think, depending on the Hive Fleet rule, you could get away with having a little bit here, a little bit of melee, a little bit of shooting. But if you're going Behemoth, which lets you reroll charge distances, you want to put everything into combat. But if you're going with one of the other ones, I think it's Kraken. You correct me if I'm wrong on that, Paul, but one of the other ones lets you reroll ones for shooting in the shooting phase.
And flesh hooks, they're assault 2, and they can be fired within 1 inch of an enemy unit, and can target enemy units within 1 inch of friendly units. So it's kind of like their pistols.
The combat pistol thing.
The little tickle claws coming out saying, "Hey."
Well, they're strength of the user, so that some of those tickles may be a little bit more potent.
Yeah, I mean,
ribs.
Yeah, I to really validate what Chris said, I mean, for sure, if you're building a Hive Fleet that's based on shooting, you definitely go Devourers and whatnot. But if you're gonna build a mass charging fleet, then make sure that you're maximizing your rules to your benefit.
The Tervigon can still spawn Termagants. At the start of your movement phase, a Tervigon can spawn Termagants. If it does so, add the new unit of 10 Termagants to your army and set them up on the battlefield so that it is wholly within 6 inches of a Tervigon and more than 1 inch from the enemy. All these models are armed with flesh borers. Alternatively, you can replace up to 10 models lost earlier in the battle in an existing unit of Termagants from your army that are within 6 inches of the Tervigon.
Now, one of the old jokes of the Tyranid book was the random amount of Termagants you get and when the Tervigon goes dry. Now, there's no going dry for these,
there is
right?
Not. Nope. At the start of your movement phase, it can spawn.
It's a huge buff.
And it does say wholly within 6 inches of the Tervigon and more than 1 inch from the enemy. So spawn them, you could charge with them. I mean, you're 1 inch away from the enemy.
Yep, there's no restrictions there.
I don't see anything.
That's going to be a fun combo. I can see a lot of lists utilizing.
Models places
still paying for them though, right?
Yeah. It says at the start of your movement phase, a Tervigon can spawn Termagants.
But it's saying if it does so, add a new unit of 10 Termagants.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're going to end up paying for those.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure for new units,
that's
going to be a reserve points thing. But the replenishing dead guys from existing units, I think that's going to be a non-reserve point thing. That's my take.
Look, bring up what it says for reserves right now, because I know that there's matched play that modify the main rules and codexes. So somebody grab that right now. All right, so you bring up a good point. So in the reinforcement points in the choose your armies section here in the rule book, it says sometimes a psychic power or ability will allow you to add units to your army or replace units that have been destroyed. One of the most common examples of such is it might allow you to summon demons to the battlefield. In a match play game, you must set aside some of your points in order to use these units. The points you set aside are called your reinforcement points and need to be recorded on your army roster. So yes, I'm going to say that both of these things will key off of the reinforcement points.
So if I want to spawn 5 rounds, I have to pay for 5 units?
Yes.
All right, I don't like this unit anymore.
Yeah, that's one of the things. We saw that a lot in Age of Sigmar as well when they went over to match play and had the same situation. It was these units that used to be super powerful or were very powerful in open play or just, those units are very powerful in that context because they can just start spitting out units. But then once you have to start paying for them, you really have to look at it as, is it valuable for me to be able to spawn these 1 inch from my opponent? Is that trick going to be worth not just having them on the table from the get-go and being effective the whole game? So am I going to get 4 rounds of this Tervigon spewing these out before he gets killed? It's very useful if you get in that situation where your Tervigon's just right up in their face and every turn he's pumping more of these out. But if he gets popped, then what do you do?
Termagants is 40 points, like base. That's not including the war gear. So, maybe if you have some weird number of points in your army and you filled up all your force org slots, maybe that's something you do, but your point is well made, Ricky.
Yeah.
This thing does explode, and as a brood progenitor, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 in the shooting phase for all friendly Termagant units within 6 inches of the model. So it's one of those big bugs that buffs the little bugs.
Now, does it have a synaptic feedback or whatever it's called, where it can damage the nearby little bugs if it
it's
dies?
a synaptic backlash. If the Tervigon is reduced to 0 wounds, roll a d6 before removing the model from the battlefield. Each friendly Hive Fleet Termagant unit within 6 inches of the Tervigon immediately suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the result. So up to 6. So yes,
Yikes.
it is a Psyker. It knows Smite and another Psychic power. It can cast 1 and deny 1 per turn.
Can I just say that I like that? I mean, I know that like as a Tyranid player that hurts when that happens, but it's fun, right?
I've always envisioned it like it falling over and landing.
Yeah. It's just a very cool visual to see play out on tabletop. I love it when we get to see stuff like that happen. So I like rules like that.
The Neurothrope is what we were talking about earlier. Is it has the Spirit Leech ability. Each time a Neurothrope slays a model using the Smite Psychic power, you can heal a wound on a friendly Hive Fleet Zoanthrope within 6 inches. It is also a Zoanthrope.
See, I thought that Spirit Leech was every time you put this model on the table, each Tyranid player longfully remembers the Doom of Malantai and wishes for it to come back.
I think that's true. That's also true.
Also called Living in the Past.
I'm okay with it being gone. That thing was brutal.
That thing is stupid.
This thing can cast 2 psychic powers and deny 1.
That's good.
That's one of the things you do all have to look. Like you can't just assume that it's 2 and 2 or whatever. I kind of like the way they mix it up as one of the things they can toggle for adjusting what the overall power of the unit is.
Now let's remember too that this is kind of a brand new thing for this model to be a separate single model character. Like in the past, it's always been a part of like a sergeant to the unit of Zoanthropes. Now it's its own thing and can buff several different units at the same time.
It being a character is important because this is one of those floating things, that normally you would just say, okay, I'm going to shoot my couple of las cannons at it and hope for the best. Now being a 5 wound character, it has some innate protection and it also has a 3+ invulnerable save. So this thing is going to be around for a long time.
Those things have always been obnoxious with their 3-up invul. I get it that their head is kind of a little bit bigger than a storm shield, but come on, give me a break, guys.
It's pulsating and glowing.
Yeah, it's just that's such a cool model when you think about it. Like it just runs around and shoots mind bullets at you, and no matter what you're throwing at it, its sheer will and dominance is protecting it. Like that's like a thematic unit that I've always thought was just interesting.
I have always understood it. I have not always liked it because sometimes your opponent just doesn't fail 3+.
Especially where it's like a multi-wound model too. Now, I say this out of kind of like an opponent's respect, right? The Zoanthropes have been for a long time, since I started playing, they've been that unit where it's like, all right, you got a 3+, crap, all right, throw so much, you just have to make them throw so many dice that you hope they fail.
Now, how many points is Old One Eye currently in the index?
Old One Eye is 140 points in the index.
100 now he's 200 points.
Why?
What did they do?
Well, he has 9 wounds, strength 7, toughness 7.
All right, I like that he's untargetable. That's cool, but
I like
what
that
else?
part. He is an immortal battering ram.
That sounds cool enough. I dig it.
When old One Eye, now he also has instinctive behavior, and he's not synapse.
Yeah, he's a Carnifex. That makes sense.
So that does matter. When Old One Eye finishes a charge move, roll a dice. On a 4+, one enemy unit within 1 inch suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, add 1 to all hit rolls for Old One Eye in the fight phase if it charged in the same turn.
That second part's new. The D3 mortal wounds is in the index, but that second half, the +1 to hit, that is new.
He has a Berserk Rampage. Each time you make a hit roll of a 6+ for Old One Eye, you may immediately make 1 additional attack with the same weapon against the same unit. These attacks do not confer extra attacks.
Okay, Tesla basically. I like it.
Well, it's a successful hit.
+1, right?
Yeah, it's like every successful hit, not on a 6, but every time he hits you.
Each time you make a hit roll of 6+, you may immediately make 1 additional attack.
Okay, yeah, but remember he now gets +1. So
yeah, he's an alpha leader, so he adds 1 to the hit rolls in the fight phase for friendly Hive Fleet Carnifex units that are within 6 inches of the model.
Okay, yeah, the old Berserk Rampage doesn't specify it needs to be on a 6+, so that's interesting.
Yeah, they nerfed it a bit.
Basically.
Yeah, but 5+ when he charges. So
5 attacks.
Oh yeah, you're getting 2 of those.
And I like it how his Hive Fleet is open. He's not pre-described to any particular Hive fleet.
That's true for all of them, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yep. So I can just see like a kind of a Plants versus Zombies sort of thing with the Hive fleet. It's like, all right, these ones you're getting a new one. Send that one down the lane.
He's armed with monstrous crushing claws, and they do have the innate subtract 1 from all hit rolls, but you get to add 1 for all hit rolls, so it kind of washes it out.
Balances, yeah. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, and a Thresher Scythe, which is his tail that he can get a 1 extra swing with in there.
Those have been so, like, boring for so long. I want them to do something exciting with the tail weapons one day.
Yeah. You know, some of them, I mean, they've been better than others and other times. This one is unfortunately just strength 4, but you get to make 1 and only 1 attack with this weapon. Make D3 hit rolls for the attack instead of 1.
All right, we're getting a little exciting.
He's swinging that thing around.
A little flailing around.
That'll help him. Yeah, like against like the little mobs you don't care about, the things you're just trying to do damage to cause a few extra wounds to make them lose a few models on the leadership tests.
Now, Tyranid warriors, I think the important thing to mention to them, we talked a little bit about them before, about what they hit on and their weapons, is that they are synapse and they have Shadow of the Warp themselves, which is pretty good if you ask me.
Did they have Shadow of the Warp before? I knew they were synapse, but not Shadow of the Warp. Is that new?
Yeah, they had it before.
They had it in the index. Yeah.
I think it's
anything that has Synapse or Shadow in the Warp, like instantly got better for the release of this book.
Well, I think that these are going to be units because they're 3 wounds apiece. You know, you're going to be pushing them up. I mean, their weapons are 18 inches, so you're going to be trying to get them within range of that 18 inch. You're going to get some use out of these area of effect abilities. So I think it's on them. It's on them positioned well, I think.
I remember one day when I was first kind of learning how to play against Tyranids, I had an overhead view of a 6x4 table, and I was putting templates down of Synapse and stuff like that. You would be amazed how easy it is to get full table coverage of Synapse and all the buffs that you need. So, you know, when we're talking about the Synapse and stuff like that for you know, players that are considering starting NIDs or something, don't be so scared that you have to overload on Synapse, because you're going to start having, diminishing returns? I guess that's like a good way of saying it.
That's one way of saying it. Yeah, I can see what you mean.
But yeah, you can easily flood the table with enough Synapse if you just kind of like look at that. Use some templates and stuff, and just, you know, you can even set it up on Paint and look at it that way. But it'll help you get an idea of positioning and stuff like that for how you want to plan your army to move forward, and for your tactics and movement and things like that.
Before the break, let me talk about Genestealers. Genestealers, they got a little bit better, if you ask me, especially when you can combine them with stuff like some of the other things we're going to talk about in Hive Fleet attributes and whatever. Genestealers, 3 attacks apiece base. They do get the rending claws, where on a 6+, you do it at AP neg 4, which I think is not insignificant. AP neg 4 is serious business. Genestealers have 4 attacks instead of 3, while their unit has 10 or more models. Not insignificant. They have a 5+ invulnerable save. They can charge even if they advance during their turn, which is bad news for lots of armies. And they can have an extended carapace. Genestealers with extended carapace save characteristic is 4+, but they lose swift and deadly. So I don't know that I would want to trade out the extra armor to remove swift and deadly, especially when you look at this. They have a new rule called Infestation. If your army includes any units of Genestealers, you can place up to 4 infestation nodes anywhere in your deployment zone when your army deploys. You can then set up any units of Genestealers lurking instead of setting them up on the battlefield. If an enemy model is ever within 9 inches of an infestation node, the node is destroyed and removed from the battlefield. Whilst there are any friendly infestation nodes on the battlefield, this unit can stop lurking at the end of your movement phase, set it up wholly within 6 inches of a friendly infestation node. That infestation node is then removed from the battlefield. If this unit is still lurking when the last friendly infestation node is removed, the unit is destroyed. So there's a big risk there. But I want to point out, though, that there's no restriction of how close you are to the enemy when you deploy your Genestealers out of this node.
Yeah, it's kind of a wonky teleport homer mechanic.
Yeah.
I got a bone to pick with the 10+ rule. Genestealers, historically, they hit like a freight train, right? Yep. When you go over 10 models, you're getting into that like overkill mode. Realistically, in my opinion, what do you need an extra attack for when you're already at that point overkilling?
Things have 24, 30-something wounds in this game now, Troop. you might need all those attacks.
I found that, every instance
so like a
where-
Mortarian Hunter or something.
Yeah, like every instance where I've gone up against units of just 10 Genestealers, they haven't been enough to kill what they were attacking in one round. The larger units, though, those have been scary.
This infestation, though, I think this is the skill tester I was talking about, because if you bait your opponent into getting there or trying to get there, or even you could even use them as almost like counter assault to where they're, or counter tactics to where they're not going to want to come towards you. You know, your Emperor's Will may be safe until turn 3 because they can't get near because of the nodes. You might be able to defend some progressive objectives because these nodes are, because you get even one Genestealer unit gives you the 4 infestation nodes. So that gives you many different options to where you can bring these guys out, and there's no restriction of how close you need to be to the enemy, other than the fact that, you know, the enemy's not going to be within 9 inches of it, but you can place your unit within 6 inches of the node.
Let me back up, and just because I spaced out a little there, I know, shocking that I've done that, but like if I take 2 Genestealer units, do I get 8 nodes?
It doesn't look like, I don't get that from the read here. It says if your army includes any units of Genestealers, you can place up to 4 infestation nodes anywhere in your deployment zone when your army deploys.
Okay, that's very clear. You get the 4 max. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Now, this is going to be one of those skill tester things to where I think that if you get really kind of good, or it's like poker, you know, you could bluff with these things. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for people that are going with heavy Genestealer strategies.
Yeah, it would definitely be neat to see if somebody would sacrifice, or at least risk sacrificing a whole unit of Genestealers just to bait somebody into dropping their deep striking units in on top of this thing, just to turn around and just be like, oh, okay, good on you. You're out of position or something. You know, I could definitely see you causing trouble for people doing something just to make them sweat.
Well, anytime you're forcing your opponent to make decisions, there's always the potential they make the wrong one.
I'm going to make the wrong one.
What are the points on these guys?
Genestealers base are 10 points apiece.
That is a lot cheaper than I remember them being historically.
I think that's a pretty good deal for the Genestealers, personally. I mean, they're the same points in the index as well, but I think that's what kind of makes their strength stand out.
There are some point increases, and this is the last thing we'll talk about before we take that quick break and come in with the interview from Guy. But the Exocrine, for instance, is 216 points. But some of the war gear and stuff went down, like the biomorphs, like adrenal glands for monsters is 5 points, for other units is 1 point, for enhanced senses. I mean, there are some other things that like some of the weapons and stuff have changed. So the points in how you build an army have shifted around a little bit. And we'll talk more about that over the course of the next couple of shows. But I think it is important to know that some of these things have gone up. And I know that we have personally recommended Exocrines be purchased because of how effective they are in the shooting phase. And that still stays. If they don't move, you can still shoot twice, but now you're paying a little bit more for them. So keep that in mind. Your lists are going to change, I believe, at least in some capacity. So maybe some of this other stuff sounds attractive to you. Well, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back with Chris and I doing the spot with Guy, and then we're going to come back and do some more on the Tyranids. Hold tight.
Sounds good.
Forced Narrative is brought to you by Dicehead.com. www.dicehead.com. Games, hobby, supplies, and comics. They have it all.
Hey everybody, welcome to a very special segment of Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined tonight by Chris Morgan.
How you doing?
And author Guy Haley.
Hello.
Guy, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me on.
This is your first time on Forge the Narrative, and we are very happy to have you.
It's no problem. I do like doing these, these podcasts that are done by the fans, for the fans, and they're really popular and they're lots of fun. So I'm perfectly happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to pick your brain and want to know lots of stuff about your work with the Blood Angels. But before we get like too deep down that rabbit hole, I want to point out that you've written it's a ton of stuff for the Black Library, and most of it's 40k.
Yeah, it is. I have written a lot of stuff for them, and most of it, on the balance of it is 40k, but I have done I did a couple of novels for the fantasy, for Warhammer Fantasy before that transmutated into Age of Sigmar, and I've done some stuff for them since, but they tend to deploy me where they need me most, and at the moment that's in the 40k universe, so
It's a busy time.
Yeah. I'm a sort of like a writerly soldier of fortune. I go where I'm requested. I go where the money is.
Well, you've gotten your hands on some very strong properties like the Primarchs. I mean, like Perturabo and Mortarion. I mean, you're in the deep waters.
Oh yeah, definitely am now. By the way, I'm sorry if you can hear like something gnawing on a bone. I've got my Alaskan Malamute in here, and he's eating a massive bone right by my feet. So I apologize. It's not interference. It's my very own sort of I don't know, direwolf or whatever, munching on his post dinner snack.
A little familiar.
Yeah, they do get me to do quite a lot of the high profile stuff now, for which I'm very, very grateful. You've got to prove yourself, obviously, before you get given projects like that. I've been writing for the Black Library now since about 2009, I think. I wrote Baneblade, originally started writing Baneblade. It's only the second book I've written. And of course, I did used to work for Games Workshop. I was the editor of White Dwarf for a few years back in the day, and I had a long association with them before that because I started out my career as a magazine journalist, reporting on science fiction shows, TV, and books and things like that on some fairly major sort of genre magazines over here. Yeah, but you do have to prove yourself before you get given that sort of thing. They don't just give it to you and let you run with it.
Do you play 40k at all?
Yeah, man, I'm surrounded. I'm sat here at the moment. I've got like 5 Death Guard Plague Marines I'm painting on my left hand, actually, because my work desk is also my hobby desk. And on my right hand side here, I've got 100 Nurglings, which I was telling a friend I've decided to paint 100 Nurglings because I counted them all on the little stacked up bases. So yeah, I've been playing Warhammer since 1984. I started on first edition Warhammer. I've played every single edition of Warhammer that's been in existence on 40k. I've played most of the specialist games over the years and collected them at one time or another. I've got a big the forces I'm working on right now. I'm known largely as a greenskin player because I wrote Skarsnik, which was my big sort of fantasy Games Workshop fantasy novel, and I've always played Orcs and Goblins, but the last few years I've been concentrating on Nurgle. So I've got a big Age of Sigmar Nurgle force and a new Death Guard force, and of course I've got a Demonic Legion which I'm painting with the same. They've all got the same bases, so I can use. I've got 4 armies for 2 systems basically.
I love doing that.
I follow you on Twitter, and I've seen your Death Guard coming about. Now, again, I don't know who plays, who just collects, because I mean this is a hobby that covers a lot of ground. But they look great. I mean, very good painter.
Yeah, cheers, man. I have been painting since I was like 10 years old, so. I always try and my big problem with the hobby is that I always try and paint every model to the best of my ability, and that includes these Nurglings I've got here, just staring at me in their little mounds.
And they're mocking you with their silly grins, and
they are going, paint all our teeth individually, guy, because you like that kind of thing. So I always try to, because for me, painting, especially since I became a writer, I'm not a person that can sit and do nothing. I find it really, really hard to relax and do nothing at all. Whereas if I paint, I'm not using the part of my brain that I use for writing or words or anything at all. It's still creative, but it's a different part of my brain. I suppose like a Space Marine switching half his brain off with his catalepsia node or whatever, it allows me to sort of rest while still being active. Yeah, I'm like the sort of dolphin painter man or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that is very cool. So Nurgle, were you a Nurgle fan before you started writing, or did that how did that circle into each other?
I've got a particular painting style, which developed because I play a lot of greenskin stuff, which is quite sort of messy in a way. I paint in a sort of quite a messy way, and Nurgle sort of fits into that. The other thing that's drawn me to Nurgle, I mean, I was playing Orcs for years in 40k. I mean, I got the first lead box set of Orcs, and I was playing them for years and years and years. And then in around about 2000, I was playing lots of 40k, and I just got tired of them all dying. So I went for the Space Marine army that had the best saving throws. I mean, this is God's honest truth, yeah. And I went for Nurgle because they got 2 saving throws basically. But as time's gone on, and the emphasis has swung, I think, quite rightly in the terms of like the oppositional forces between the good guys, whether they be the Stormcast Eternals or the Space Marines, and Chaos as the main baddie, then Nurgle's very much become the Chaos faction that I collect. So, it's an organic process, a journey that we all go on as hobbyists.
Yeah, most Nurgle things I would describe as an organic process.
Yeah, it's an organic mess.
And I'm not going to call it messy, it's stylistic.
Yeah. No, they're great. They're just so disgusting as well. I really like that. So, yeah, that's what attracts me to them. But I've got loads of armies. I've got an Imperial Guard army, or Astra Militarum, I should say. I've got a Iron Jaws army. I've got a really big Space Orc army. I've got a small Space Marines army. I've got Lord of the Rings elves. I've got Lord of the Rings Mordor.
Oh man,
you see that, Paul? Another person plays Lord of the Rings.
I love Lord of the Rings.
The fourth person I've ever encountered.
It doesn't matter how many pictures I send him of like tons of people playing. It's like,
I'm kidding,
no, Chris, it's just you and your dad.
Look, I love Lord of the Rings.
My dad as well. I play with my dad too.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'm a long-time gamer and hobbyist. I've been doing this stuff for a very, very long time, and that's how I got into it. Unlike some of the writers who write for Black Library, were writers first and then got into writing for Black Library because of that. It's the other way around for me.
Man, that's very cool. And you have a new book coming out. Now we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's already out, but you have a Blood Angel novel coming out very soon.
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's The Devastation of Baal, which is a sort of, but not quite, sequel to Dante, which was out earlier this year, I think. I lose track of when my books come out. And it's the first in the new Space Marines Conquest series, which is the rebooted Space Marines battles. So, that should be very exciting to read about, because it's the combination of years and years of lore building up to the attack of Hive Fleet Leviathan on the Blood Angels homeworld, or the home system, which has been mentioned over and over and over again for years and years.
The way the Codex was written, it's like, that 1 second to midnight kind of thing. And
yeah. Well, when I was asked if I wanted to do a Space Marine Battles one, and I'd written Dante a few months before, and I went, can I do the attack on Baal? And I'm like, really? Do you really want to do that? Why? We're moving into the new Dark Imperium era and everything, and maybe we perhaps want to focus a bit more on stuff that involves more Primaris Space Marines. I'm going, no, seriously, you have got to let me write this story. I really, really want to do it. It'll be a great sequel to Dante, and it'll be a great sort of segue from the end of the current lore into the the new stuff that's come out, and also if we don't do it now, it'll never ever be done, or it won't be done for years and years and years. So I really pushed for that. I just thought it'd be awesome, because I think I see the Blood Angels as being a very doomed sort of noble and romantic set of chaps, and I thought there's nothing more doomed, noble and romantic than them nearly all getting horribly murdered. So yeah, it was great fun to write. Don't take nobody out there who loves Blood Angels, because I know there's been a lot of speculation about how many Blood Angels actually survived the Devastation of Baal. Please do not read anything serious into what I was just saying. You'll have to wait and see how they fare.
I'm sure everybody makes it out just fine.
Yeah.
The crap talk that I get as a big Blood Angels fan is, of course, the low-hanging fruit of, oh, look, you got saved by Khorne. So I'm hoping to see some kind of addressing of that issue in your upcoming book.
Oh, well, it's interesting you should say that, but I can't say anything more than that.
Oh, no, I am happy to wait to read it, but I just want to know that something's there. There will be words that I will read that will say things.
It makes me feel good that you actually sought this out, and that you had a real appreciation of what it means to us Blood Angel fans, and also the lore that's come before it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and especially because before I wrote Dante, I was asked to write Dante because I think someone else was going to write it and they dropped out or something, because that's happened to me a few times in the past. Because I write very, very quickly. I'm known as one of the Black Library's fastest writers, and quite often, people often ask me, do you pitch books or are they assigned to you? And for me, I often get them assigned to me because they need a book writing in a specific time frame that hits a certain quality level and will fit in a certain space and a range. And before I wrote Dante, the only thing I really knew about Blood Angels is that they just kept kicking my face in every time I played them on the tabletop. So
you must not have played them in a while then.
Oh, well, back in the old days, back in the days of like 3rd edition, 2nd and 3rd edition, when they had their supercharged rhinos and their first turn charge and all that nonsense, my orcs just dying by the droves.
They ignore injury on the Death Company.
Oh, man. I just took off my hat, put it over my heart.
all that sort of stuff. So, but I got really, really into them and really into their lore, and I just really wanted to do something else that sort of carried on with that. So yeah, I really did seek it out. And I know what you're saying about Khorne, and I did look at that and I went, it looks here that the Blood Angels, according to the timeline, if you read it in this particular way, they get sort of saved twice by other people. Let's do something with that. So yeah, hopefully you'll be pleased with the results.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. But that's really nice. And so when you say sequel to Dante, now Dante is one of those characters that does. He has almost a life of his own because he's existed for so long. How did you
figuratively and literally?
Yeah, was that right? Yeah, very true. Was that intimidating approaching? Now you've written about Primarchs, so take that for what it is. I consider Dante. One, he's older than almost all the Primarchs mathematically, but. Well, how did you go about that, and how did you wrestle with that? Was it intimidating at all?
Well, it's interesting actually because they said Dante is he's like one of the really big, most important characters in Warhammer 40,000, and he's also he is he's one of the beacons of hope, in this horrible universe. He's a space vampire basically, but who manages to keep the lid on his worst desires and side. And he's really noble. He's a great general, and he's been fighting for a millennia and a half. And he's just good. He's so good. He's like he's that little point of light that sets off the whole bleakness and blackness of the Warhammer 40,000 universe beautifully, because he's to my mind, he's like the last noble man. All the other good guys have got some other sort of stuff going on, apart from maybe Marneus Calgar. They're either fanatics or they're lunatics or they're morally compromising somewhere.
When you are boring like Marneus, it doesn't count. When you have all this other things going on, it means something when you're
shots fired.
Look, if he was your local senator, you'd love him, But yeah, he's not exactly. Yeah, I like Marneus Calgar actually. I wrote about him too recently in Dark Imperium, and I found him quite an interesting character. But the interesting thing about Dante though, and the Blood Angels, I found when I sat down to write about them, is that because, and this is a narrative I put together in my head, it may or may not be true, and you may or may not agree with me, but this is where I see it. The Blood Angels were detailed. They're amongst the earliest chapters to have been detailed in any way, shape, or form. All right. And when Black Library started up, they were one of the first chapters to have novels written specifically about them. And because of that, there were quite a lot of things, because as time has gone on, Games Workshop's background's got more and more detailed and more sort of it's become more and more like a true history as time has gone on. But when the Blood Angels were created and elaborated upon, and when the first books by Jim Swallow were written especially, a lot of that sort of way that they approach things now didn't exist. So when I sat down to write Dante, I thought there'll be loads of stuff about Dante. There'll be loads of stuff about the way the Blood Angels are depicted, about what their rituals are, about how they fight, and how they regard the universe, how they regard their Primarch. And actually, a lot of that stuff wasn't defined at all. I mean, they actually didn't have a name for their fortress monastery. So I had to invent one. I mean, everybody else, you've got the Fang, you've got Corax's Raven Spire, whatever it's called, and lots of them have got these great sort of fortresses. But they ain't. The Blood Angels fortress is just described in these very, very vague terms as being this beautiful sort of holdfast somewhere. And it was the same with a lot of their. Although there's been lots of great stories, I really like Jim's books. They're great Space Marine stories, but they don't delve they didn't really delve into the background of the chapter at all. So I was really surprised when I sat down to write Dante that there hadn't really been any stories written in depth about him in the past. He'd been in lots of stories, but he generally sort of turned up and went, "You Blood Angels, go over here and do this," and then he'd exit stage left. Yeah.
And one of the comics too, I remember, when I saw him in the comics. That they came out quite some years ago.
Blood Quest.
Yeah, out of the armor. I kind of challenged the perceptions, but that was it. That was all.
Yeah. So, and actually, my take on Dante is quite different to the one in Blood Quest as well.
It's very obvious, the differences in mentality from a publication point of view, from when that came out to when things are coming out now, and the way that the stories evolved. So I also, when I got Blood Quest recently, so it was, the juxtaposition was a lot more dramatic for me.
Yeah.
And I like the direction he took with it. I feel like it fits in pretty well with the way that they're portraying things nowadays. And as a Blood Angel fan, not knowing the name of the Arcangelicum was frustrating, like terribly frustrating. When I'm thinking like, okay, so what is this called, and what's the name of this sword, and what is the icon called? And yeah, all of that.
God, being as close to it as I feel like that I am, if you had asked me what the name of it was, I would have just thought I'd forgotten and would have
it's
sworn.
Never been defined. Yeah. And it's because the Blood Angels are such an ironic thing, really, because the Blood Angels are such an important part of the 40k background. So they had quite a lot of extra detail. At a time when very few Space Marine chapters had any detail at all, they had some detail. But that detail was never really built upon as time went on. So now it's been, I've had the opportunity. It's been a great opportunity to go in there and put loads of stuff in. I mean, obviously, Jim Swallow wrote his Horus Heresy Blood Angels Space Marine books after he wrote his Blood Angels books. So there's lots of stuff in his Horus Heresy era Blood Angels material that is in my books.
That book is so good. His Heresy book, I think, is awesome.
Yeah,
Fear to Tread, like, it has the best one-liner in the entire Heresy series.
What's that?
It's where Sanguinius is casting Kabanda back into the warp portal. It says, "If you really do come from the realm that men once called hell, tell them that Sanguinius sent you," or something. Yeah. Just chucks him in the hole. That was so good.
No, his take on Sanguinius was great, and so the tone of that informed a lot of what I did with Dante, and also in the Devastation of Baal. So I kind of thought it would be intimidating, but I actually realized when I sat down to read it, because I do loads, and I try to read everything about a particular faction before I write about it. Because as a really big fan, I like all this stuff to be like part of a whole fabric universe. So if someone mentions something somewhere, I want to make sure I mention the same thing rather than making up a very similar thing of my own, Mm-hmm. And if a guy looks one way in one book, then he's got to look the same way in another, and so on and so forth. The Blood Quest aside. Because I actually I just forgot to look at Blood Quest.
I wasn't calling you out. That was a long time ago, and really was its own thing.
That's why I think I could get away with it, to be honest. And also, if I had read it again, because I did read it when it first came out. If I had read it again, then I probably would have done what I did anyway, because it did come out a long time ago. So there we are. Yeah. So it wasn't.
Things weren't as unified back then. I mean, you pretty much got what you got, and things were their own little islands. And now, it's much different.
Well, I'm always trying to press to make sure that things line up. I always try to talk to the studio and everything to make sure that the books reflect what's in the games, and try to have an ongoing dialogue with them so that the games reflect what's in the books. It's really important for me, just as a fan. I've never really been. One of the great things I like about Black Library fiction is that it's not like a lot of the tie-in fiction lines. You read a Star Trek novel, and a Star Trek novel is it's an exercise in playing with your favorite characters and tropes, but it's not real, in inverted commas. It's not a genuine part of that universe, because someone can come along and then they can go, actually, we're going to make a movie about this, which completely disregards all this stuff. Yeah. And that does happen, of course, in 40k, because the IP, the intellectual property of the universe, evolves as time goes on, but it's much less pronounced, and it's much more of a whole. And that's what makes it so exciting to contribute to it, because it's something I've loved since I was very small, and I get to directly influence it, So I love that. It's great.
Well, people will definitely take what you have written as the context for their army list, how they paint an insignia. It goes well beyond, like, we talk about this a lot on the show, is just how many hours that we devote to the fantasy of 40k, and what a small percentage of that is actually playing. The rest of it is just living in the universe in some capacity.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get people, because I wrote there's a Primaris Space Marine Space Wolf successor chapter in Dark Imperium. And I've had several people texting me or, well, twittering me going, oh, yeah, do you know what? What's the colours? What are the colours for the wolf spear? And I'm like, oh, okay. I shall, yes, we'll get back to that at some point in print.
We get an official answer for this.
Yeah, but people really want to know, and that's cool. It's really cool that the stuff that you write inspires people's hobby, because that's what it all comes back to. It all
matters. I mean, I put my Blood Angel insignias on the opposite shoulder pad of every other Space Marine Legion out there because of what was in one picture, and I believe the rumor is that it was just an inverted picture, but yet that is what was published, and so that's the way it was.
But in a way, that's kind of cool as well, because as writers, we have to come up with reasons why things are like this. When I wrote The Eternal Crusader, which was my Helbrecht book, I delved into some really ancient lore from when they ran the Armageddon worldwide campaign back in the day. And I discovered that in various stories, Helbrecht had actually gone to the Armageddon. He'd come to the Armageddon system in two different ways at two different times. Yeah, so I was like, oh, which one of these is true? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to make them both true. So I try to make everything make sense. I want everything to be real. I'm a big fan.
So doing this research and getting yourself kind of really in the moment, is there a big difference with how you prepare for like a Horus Heresy type story versus a 40k story?
Yeah, because generally speaking, because I didn't start reading the Horus Heresy novels when they first came out, because I just had too much other stuff on. So when I'm writing a Horus Heresy story, I have to do a lot more reading. I've read probably 2/3 of the Horus Heresy books now, but every time I sit down to write a new Horus Heresy book, I do tons and tons and tons and tons of reading. I've got a Horus Heresy book out about Leman Russ soon, and I read everything to do with Leman Russ that had come out, absolutely everything, and plenty of other stuff to do with the Space Wolves. So there is a little bit of a difference. I was more comfortable in the 40k universe than I was in the 30k universe, simply because I've been playing in that universe for like 30 years, or nearly 30 years. Well, actually, no, it is. My God, it is 30 years.
Do you need a moment? I'll give us a moment here.
It's all right. I've got some beer here. I'm slowly drinking it. That'll sort me out. But yeah, the Horus Heresy stuff, I need to do more research, or I did need to do more research. Now I've written a couple of books in that setting. I'm much more au fait with it than I was. But to begin with, I was like, oh my God, where do I start?
Well, there is a lot, and we get questions to our show all the time. Where should I start with the books? And I definitely say start at the beginning, read like the first 4 or 5 novels, and then you can and then they're kind of like ones that are linked together.
Yeah, the non-linear nature of it just kind of makes it hard to go from there. But,
no, you're completely right. You're completely right. In fact, I was looking at it the other day thinking, if I was remarketing this range of books, I might split it down into different strands. Because there's definitely a main strand, but then there's also a Dark Angel strand and a Raven Guard strand and a Shattered Legion strand and so on. So, but then, how do you divide it up? You could cut that cake so many ways, so it's probably just best to leave it alone. So
but if you can read them all, because they are very enjoyable, and you guys, if I can just say awesome, again anyway, but you guys are really putting a lot of color and context on things that we thought we already knew.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of this. There'd be no point writing a novel whenever we write a Horus Heresy story, we always try to put a different twist on it, even if it's just the way that someone who was actually there, involved in the events that we all think we know, perceived it. It's a bit crass to try and come up with a crazy twist every time you depict some sort of event, but there is always more to know about that. There's quite often we know the facts or the supposed facts, but we don't often know why or who was involved or who did what.
We know the outline. We know that this thing happened at this point in time, but there's all these different eyes and looking on it and different perspectives, like the Council in IKEA. That the way that played out.
Yeah.
That's just one of the amazing
different
things.
Books.
Yeah,
because Burning of Prospero, you saw it from one perspective, and then 1,000 Suns, you saw it from a different perspective, and they were almost like two different events, but you knew they were the same, and it really reinforced that idea of perspective.
That's what I'm
who's manipulating
that. There's a million different moments like that, but that's something that I think that if you've been playing 40k for a little while, you know exactly what happened there. Like you could tell people, you could spend an hour talking about that one thing you read 10 years ago. And this was just so much better reading it in the novels.
Yeah. Well, novels, the great thing about novels is they have a very particular way of presenting a fictional universe to you, and it's very, very different to game text or fake histories, they do serve a great purpose, the Black Library novels. They're great books, and there's some great writers writing.
Yep. I have a question for you though, Guy. Just thought, as a guy who plays the game, and we've talked to a lot of authors on Fortune Narrative who write and don't play and whatever, and it's not really super big deal if they don't play.
No, of course not.
They've all had some models though, and that's cool too.
Yep. Yeah, most of them had either models that were gifted to them by fans or things that they've picked up and collected and just painted. Do you ever look into, like, say, a codex and say, oh, they don't actually have this thing I wrote for them? Does that ever happen?
Do you know what? Rarely, more and more, because for the way the Black Library is, for quite a while, it was almost sort of like its own separate thing. It was stories set within the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and then the games were another thing. But over time, they've grown closer and closer together. So actually, what's much more likely to happen nowadays is I'll look in a codex and they've put this thing in there that I've written. So, and that's always really, really gratifying. So,
well, yeah. I hope that remains true, because I'd sure love to see some Storm Talons.
Yeah. It's just the way that it works. They all influence each other. We're all part of a big happy brotherhood.
It does grow, but back in the Horus Heresy stuff, we know that there's like at least been some preliminary groundwork to start focusing the Horus Heresy back on a path to maybe wrapping up this phase.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, totally.
Just wrapping up this phase. I mean, it's been publicly stated now that we're moving into the end game now, aren't we? So, it's it's the Horus Heresy. It's all the pieces are in place. Horus is moving on Terra, so that's what's going to happen.
Were you a part of those meetings?
There's a meeting I was a part of, yes, the big meeting at Nottingham, at the headquarters it's only about 5 or 6 weeks ago, actually. And I have to say, I can't really tell you anything about it because then it would really spoil it and I get fired. But
that's not encouraged.
I just want to know how it felt to be in the room, and did everyone have...
I was going to say, it was the coolest work meeting I have ever been involved in my life, yeah? Surrounded by some really, really talented guys, and there was such a great energy in the room, and we were all going, what about this, and what happens if this, and maybe he was doing this because of that, and oh yeah, isn't this a cool idea, and what happened to him? Oh, he's dead. Oh, never mind then. And it was just
I guess he won't be there.
Nobody argued or had any, so there was no sort of like creative differences. It was really energetic, really exciting. We came up with some great ideas. You've got over the next few years, you've got some great treats in store, but I can say nothing more about it than that.
That is enough to get me, just my mouth watering, and I already feel like the goosebumps and the butterflies in my stomach just thinking about it.
I was trying to explain this to someone who's not into 40k. I think it was like probably one of my sisters-in-law. I was going, Imagine being in the meeting where you're planning out the next Star Wars movie, yeah, or something like that. That's how cool it was, right? It was that level of coolness. It was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Got some good common ground to draw.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Devastational Ball is coming out soon. You've written Dante. You've written about Mortarion. I mean, we mentioned. I mean, you have your hands on lots of different properties, and people can find this all at the Black Library site, and they also can follow you on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle?
It's you're putting me on the spot there. I think it's just @GuyHaley. Let me just check because I'm on my computer. It's @GuyHaley. Yeah, there you go. That's me.
But you you post like your models and stuff. I mean, you have an active Twitter feed.
It's not that active, to be honest with you. When I first became a writer, the first publishing contract I got with was not with Black Library, and at the time, this was in 2009. Like, you've got to have a blog, you've got to be online, you've got to be talking to people. This is the new thing. Everybody needs to be online all the time. So I tried it and I just found it innovating, and it's such a time suck. And actually, it doesn't really improve one's book sales, which is the whole point of being on these things in the first place, really. If you're a professional author, it doesn't do anything for your sales at all, really, unless you're doing it all the time. And then you don't have any time to write any books, right? So yeah, I have retreated a little bit from social media. I also think social media is perhaps one of the great evils of the 21st century, and it distracts us constantly and it makes us all anxious, and we're always checking it all the time. So
that's why I keep my Twitter feed only painting and other hobby related. There's nothing else makes its way on there.
Well, that's it. That's why I don't post about politics or any of my sort of views about anything important. I don't talk about my family on Twitter, generally speaking. I sometimes do, but I'm on there a little bit. I do post the occasional picture of my models just because I want people to go, wow, Kai, that's so cool.
Well, for me, it was, it's nice knowing that you are connected to the hobby too. Like I didn't know that you were a fan first. I wasn't sure of the background, but it was neat to know that you are, you're living the hobby similar to lots of other people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I play every week. Sometimes I play twice a week. At the moment, actually, because I play historical war games with my father as well, but at the moment we're playing Lord of the Rings, so I'm playing Games Workshop games at the moment 2 or 3 times a week. Yeah, no, I love it. I really love it. I'm addicted to it. It's terrible.
Man, that's pretty cool. Yeah, well, no, you're coming to the wrong crowd for
help. Yeah, exactly.
Get more models.
Yeah, buy my models.
I don't know if you have all the Death Guard characters that just came out, but they're all fabulous.
Man. No, I'm being strong there. I'm being strong. There's 2 more I want to get. I want to get the Tallyman, and I want to get the guy with the banner, with the icon of despair.
You don't have the Tallyman yet?
I'm going to leave it for a bit, because I've got about 40 Death Guard of various sorts that all need painting up. So.
Well, you're about to be like at 105 Nurglings, because they all, like the characters come with their, like their own special Nurgling collector edition thing.
Don't talk to me about the Nurglings. They're looking at me now.
Well, what's next? Can you tell us what's next as far as like book wise? I mean, you may not be able to since nothing's nothing's out there yet. I know Devastation of Ball is not even out yet, but let's go about it a different way. What are some things that sound interesting to you that you maybe haven't written about yet?
Well, I can tell you what I've got coming up to a certain extent, because there's the Devastation of Baal, which everybody knows about, and then there's the Horus Heresy book about Leman Russ, the title of which is yet to be announced, which has also been, because it's we're having a Black Library Weekender in November, and I'm doing a seminar on that. So, actually, if you want to find out what the Space Wolf book is called and hear me talking about it, and also I'm trying to see if I can do a reading from it as well, then come to the Black Library Weekender and you can see me in person, performing like a chimpanzee on the stage. So,
worth the price of admission by itself.
Yes, indeed. You have to buy me a drink, though, as well. What would I like to write about? I don't know. I just, to be honest with you, I'd like to explore some of the lesser known sort of corners of the universe. I noticed that books that concentrate on the non-military side of 40k are very, very popular with a certain kind of fan. And I'd like to do something like that at some point, about one of the, not necessarily the Inquisition, but about one of the Imperial organizations or something. Something about form filling, perhaps, and filing on Terra. It would be a very fascinating book.
One form's journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good idea for a story.
Yeah. Oh my, that might hit a little too close to home for some folks, but I can see how that would be popular.
I might actually write that.
Very, very cool. Thanks I know you can't get too deep, but that's one of the things I want to touch on this a little bit earlier about how, the 40k stories for a while, like they were going under the premise that they could have existed with any time within the last several thousand years of the books. I'm sorry, of the lore, because dealing from Horus Heresy to 40k, there are 10,000 years in between.
Oh, there are, yeah.
And it seemed like a lot of the books kind of played in that couple thousand years before now. Nothing after now until Dark Imperium type stuff.
Until now, yeah.
And then nothing after the Horus Heresy until we got Aaron Dembski-Bowden's Black Legion. Or Talon of Horus, I'm sorry. Yeah.
We've got Talon of Horus, but there's also the Beast Arises. That's like set only it's only set 1,500 years after the Horus Heresy.
Well, that's still new, and I'm using air quotes new. I mean, that was in the last couple of years or so.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, yeah. That's just the way it worked out, I suppose. You've got to bear in mind that Black Library was established as a time fiction range, and when you're talking about time fiction, you're talking about the thing that you're concentrating on, which is the current day in 40k.
Yes.
But we do frequently say this, that we've got 10,000 years of history to play with, and we do play with it. And, we are doing more and more of that as time goes forward. So.
Beast Arises was awesome. I mean, to have that, because that was something people were waiting on the edge of their seat for every release.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a cool idea, that, and hopefully we'll do something like that again in the future.
I know several orc players who are just super happy to be the bad guy for once. To have that kind of legend, their own. The Beast is kind of like their Primarch in some cases.
Yeah. No, it was good stuff. Yeah, but like I say, hopefully we'll do another event series like that at some point. But we've got a lot on at the moment.
I bet. Well, Guy, I know it's getting late over there for you. Is there anything else you'd like to chat about before we get out of here?
No, but I will say that if you like my 40k stuff, you can always try and check out some of my original, shall we say, science fiction novels and whatnot. They're quite good for a laugh.
Well, where's the best place people can find that?
On Amazon or in a bookstore.
Please
Sounds
check
reasonable.
Yeah, that's a solid answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny actually, because people do ask me this. They go, "Where can you find your books?" I'm going, like, in a bookshop. I get that quite a lot. Like, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a writer. Oh, are you published? I'm like, yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a writer.
There's a lot of bloggers out there, I'm just saying, but you are the real deal. And I said, very well, obviously well trusted by the Black Library, getting all the awesome properties that you're getting.
Some cool stuff. They do give me some really cool stuff to write. I mean, we didn't really talk about Dark Imperium, but I mean, that's like the signature book for the new era of 40k, and it's a trilogy, and they gave me that to write. So when they said, "Do you want to do? Will you do this for us? We think you'd be the best guy to do it."
Well, do you have another second? Because that is essentially uncharted territory, and could you tell us about that a little bit?
What about Dark Imperium?
Yeah, just about, I guess, one of those, I like to know, like, how do you get to the point to where you can write about stuff and you don't feel like to me, I mean, maybe I feel like almost like you're out there in the wild blue. You really are in uncharted territory with nobody to tell you what to do. You just got to figure it out. How do you go about it?
I mean, especially looking at like the dynamic between Guilliman and Calgar, like that, that by itself was fascinating for me.
Well, for me, I mean, the core of the book, right? So, okay, there's a lot of things that come into play when you're imagining a narrative like this. Yeah. So it being a Games Workshop book and it being tied into a whole load of new stuff, I have to at least mention the new toy soldiers. Yeah. Okay. Basically, They said to me, we want a book that we can release alongside the Dark Imperium box set. You can write about whatever you want. Yes, but it has to feature Primaris Space Marines. And of course, even if they hadn't said that, I'd have gone, yeah, it has to feature Primaris Space Marines because they're the whole thing. Right,
and they are cool.
And they are cool. They're awesome. I've got a whole bunch of them waiting to be painted. Thankfully, they're in a box, so they can't look at me accusingly.
like the
Nurglings, yeah.
Yeah, they are literally just all staring at me. They're coming for me. But I said, it would be crazy not to do a story about Guilliman. And they went, yeah, that's a fair point. It would be really cool because we've got Mortarian's come back and he's invaded Ultramar. Why don't I do effectively the story of Warzone Ultramar? We didn't want to do the Indomitus Crusade, though we may do that at some point in the future. Though Chris Rait's book, or what's it called, the one about the custodians and everything, which set
Watchers of the Throne?
Yeah, Watchers of the Throne set just before the Indomitus Crusade, and my book is set just after the Indomitus Crusade. So my book is where the Indomitus Crusade is winding down. But there was so much cool stuff in there. So basically, I had to have Guilliman in it because I really wanted to have him in it. And then, I had to feature the Primaris Space Marines. So I looked at all the background and I got to read all the stuff and speak to the designers and do all this sort of thing. But then you have to go a bit deeper. So you think, well, okay, so Guilliman's roaming around the galaxy, doling out these reinforcements left, right, and center. What's he doing with them in the meantime? And I go, well, surely he'd just have them in sort of like almost like legions, really, because he's in that same sort of like dire straits as they were at the Horus Heresy. Well, hang on a minute. What's the best way to say this? So once I decided I wanted to do something about Guilliman, I thought that, well, the most interesting thing about that would be how he feels about what has happened to his father's empire in the 10,000 years, or like the 10 minutes it seems like he's been under. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, he wakes up and he's still fighting the same war. He's fighting a war.
What's a Tyranid?
Yeah, he's up to speed on that now. And, he's up to absolutely horrified. He's just, I mean, the way I pictured it in my head is he waking up going, what the hell have you done? What? Just stop that. No, put that down. What are you over there? What's this with all the skulls? Oh my God. Just sort of imagine him like rocking up like that. So a lot of that, I started to look at the way that Guilliman was portrayed in the Horus Heresy, and a lot of it's all about his internal conflict, really, about how he feels about this Imperium, all the compromises he's got to make, all the sort of rules he's got to break as well, because there are several points in the book where people are going, didn't he ban legions? And everyone's going, oh yes, he was very wise to do that. Going like, isn't he rocking around the universe with like 9 legions? And they're going, oh no, that's completely different. And he's been really sneaky as well, and he finds it very, very distasteful. He's doing lots of things which, because he knows how to do all this stuff, because he's a Primarch, but he's having to do lots and lots of stuff that don't necessarily fit his sense of morality. So, all that sort of stuff was just fascinating to explore. And you've got that on a lesser scale as well, in the way that the Primaris Space Marines and the original Space Marines interact with each other, which will be more of that coming in the second Dark Imperium book, which I'm actually due to start writing on Monday.
So you're going to do the whole trilogy yourself? It's not something going to split up? Okay.
Yeah. I'm doing all 3 books. They're all planned out. They're all ready to go. So I'm starting to write the second one very, very, very soon. So I've been told I'm allowed to say it's a trilogy as well, so that's okay.
Very good.
Yeah, it's all right. So I'm not going to get.
Well, they called the Horus Heresy trilogy originally, also. I think.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Maybe I could just do like Guy Haley's Dark Millennium or something. No.
Hey, look.
Shoot for the moon, right?
Don't count it out.
No, I'm kidding. Three books will be more than enough. But yeah, it's so it's just really cool, all that stuff that I can explore, and it's set against this fantastic war that's going on in Ultramar. So yeah, it was. So it's a lot of different things.
God, we just lost you and brought you back in. When this recording picks back up, there's been several minutes, so I don't want to have you force you to go back and do some of that. We were talking about the Dark Imperium and then what's going to come next and the like.
No, I to be honest with you, I think we only lost it. You probably only lost like a minute or two of me waffling on. But anyway, it was a really cool thing to do. There's more of it coming. You wanted to know how ideas like that come together, and just to summarize, they all come together from a whole lot of different things, but what really drives it on is my enthusiasm for 40k. So I think that's probably the most important aspect of what I do.
Awesome, man. Guy, I know you're having some weather there, so we are going to wrap up, but can we get you on in the future?
Yeah, of course you can. Maybe, sure. No worries. I'd love to come back. You're very nice, Jen.
Thank you very much for taking the time with us. And then we are looking forward. Go back and check out all the books you've already got written on the Black Library site and in bookstores and Amazon. Just, covering all the bases.
Yeah.
And Devastation of Baal and Lehman Russ, or a Lehman Russ story. That's not the name of the book, coming out soon.
It's a Horus Heresy story that has got Lehman Russ in it.
Ooh. Nice.
So there'll be more of that. Like I said, there'll be more of that forthcoming at the Black Library weekend in a few weeks' time.
Awesome, man. Well,
Fantastic.
Thanks again. Yeah, thanks again for taking the time with us, and have a great evening.
You too. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Cheers. Take care.
Okay.
Frontline Gaming is excited to announce that tickets are now on sale for the LVO 2018. Taking place January 26th through the 28th at Bally's Casino in Las Vegas, the event will feature gaming, seminars, and social events. Don't wait, get your tickets at lasvegasopen.net today.
Hey everybody, we are back. I really enjoyed that spot with Guy. I hope you all did too. I want to go ahead and jump into some of the stratagems here for the Tyranids. And the one I want to talk about first, it's the first one here listed in the book, but it's also the Psychic Barrage. You guys heard about this yet?
Nope.
No, I can't say that I have.
Use this stratagem in your Psychic phase if a Zoanthrope unit from your army consisting of at least 3 models is within 6 inches of 2 other such units. So this is like the kill shot for Zoanthropes. If you do so, the Zoanthrope cannot take any psychic tests this phase. Instead, select a point on the battlefield within 18 inches of and visible to all 3 units. Roll a dice for each unit, friend or foe, within 3 inches of that point. Add 1 to the result if the unit being rolled for has 10 or more models, but subtract 1 if the unit being rolled for is a character. So, all that math. On a 4... I need
a flow chart, Paul.
On a 4+, that unit suffers 3d3 mortal wounds.
3d3 mortal wounds.
This is 1 command point.
Lord. That's pretty. It's okay. I mean, if you're into that, I mean, I'm not. I don't know. I kind of like that re-roll and a save roll on a Termagan or something. You know, that's good too, though. Whatever. I mean,
well, is that
your mileage may
statistically
vary.
more, though? I mean, if you have 3 smite shootings, what is more statistically going to happen? Because I'm hearing 6 shots and 6 shots.
Yeah, but it's every unit within, right?
Yeah, it's
So
within. So if
pop
there's
it right in the middle.
some bunched up units, for instance, 3 tanks sitting next to each other, 2 heavy weapon squads, 3 sentinels.
Okay, yeah.
A commissar and Harker next to a conscript squad or something. I mean, you're able to hit multiple
Gilliman
units.
next to a bunch of devastators.
I mean, it's situational, right? I mean, it's that's the way all these stratagems are going to be. It's very situational, but I think that the fact that you can give up their psychic test to not make a psychic roll, you're not trying to make a psychic test that could then be denied, right?
Yeah, there's strength in that, and then you're not going to perils
rolling
either.
A die on a 4+, some bad stuff happens.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that does seem pretty interesting. With the area effect of it, it starts multiplying its strength more and more. And for 1 command point, you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a bunch of Zoanthropes anyway. And if you do, I don't mean that you have to take them as vital to an army list. I mean, you have to have them for this. And you may find yourself in a situation because, like, for instance, if you're playing with something that, like, Grey Knights have a +1 to deny psychic powers, that you can't deny this.
Yeah, there's strength there. I mean, so on a 4-up, worst case scenario, you burn another command die to re-roll if you roll under a 4. So,
yeah, you do roll a die for each unit, friend or foe. And this could be like units that are locked up in close combat. Doesn't say anything about there's no targeting restrictions. Just has to be visible to all 3 of the units and with 18 inches.
Dirty man, you.
I'm just saying there's value there. And it doesn't have to be the closest target, which Smite is the closest target.
I like it. The stars and the moon have to align a little bit for the sight restrictions, but that actually sounds pretty neat.
I feel like that the 1 command point cost for that kind of reflects the serendipitous nature of getting it off.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I mean, but I can really see. I'm thinking back. Whenever I see something like this, I think back over some of my games to where this would have really been a problem. And I think that the situations where these types of things unfold, like for instance, a close combat or somebody's trying to hold an objective with a little bit of redundancy, that's almost unavoidable over the course of trying to win the game.
Well, the thing I like about it is that, with templates and blast weapons going away, people have gotten a little complacent about model placement. It seems like people will just bunch stuff up now and not think twice about it, and then here comes some Zoanthropes and will really make you start pulling out that range ruler and spreading some models out. So, and also, like, it could force a player into being very cautious about whether or not he really needs to group those models up for that benefit. Like, is Gilliman's ability so great that you're going to risk all those mortal wounds coming down because you had to get everything within 6 inches of Gilliman?
They'd probably still do it.
Oh God, yeah, I would in a heartbeat. I'm just going for it.
They can't target the Zoanthropes, and so I mean, you really are going to get at least a turn to get in position to pop this 3d3 off.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good. What's going to be really funny is when they pop it on their own unit and roll a 4, and it goes off on their own guy, and they use their command point to re-roll that, so their Tyranid unit doesn't get hit.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a lot of command points, though. We've discussed how easy it is, but I think you should burn through them, man. If you use all your command points,
use them,
and in the first 3 turns of the game, and it helps you win. Like, there aren't a ton of games at the competitive level that will be this grinder type games that go to turn 6. You could land some definitive hammer blows on your opponent within the first 2 or 3 turns and remove their ability to fight back. And command points help. That's all I'm saying. Burn them.
Yeah, the early game is incredibly clutch. A lot of games are decided in those first turns, in my opinion.
I mean, the phrase "smoke them if you got them" is very appropriate.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like, well, who cares that you're, doing really well on turn 5 with the 3 models you have left? You should have used those when you had your whole army, and you got more turns with more models, or you're punching harder from the get go. You're going to have diminishing returns at the end of the game. It's just the way it works. So use them if you can. Of course, I always play armies that have like 4 command points, so I'm usually out by turn 2 anyway. So
there you go. There's an implant attack ability, and this is use this stratagem after a Tyranid unit from your army fights in the fight phase. Roll a dice for each enemy model other than a vehicle that was wounded by any of this unit's attacks and not slain. On a 2+, the model suffers a mortal wound.
Oh my lord.
That would be great for finishing off just that obnoxious model you want to get rid of.
Well, roll a die for each enemy model, so it's only going to be the ones that took wounds from that unit in that phase. So I think
that would be one model.
Yeah, it's going to be one model, but when you will be able to finish that one model off in a lot of situations, I think.
Also, and if some random, thing happens and you somehow have locked in like 3-4 units with them, and you've, caused a wound on 4 units, well then that's 4 mortal wounds.
Yeah, if you got 20 Genestealers locked up.
Yeah, okay. Good on you.
With 4 different units, it could play out.
Yeah.
But it has to be multi-wound units.
Yeah.
Well, just think of all the times where you've killed everybody in the squad except that one guy
with one wound.
One
well,
wound
like
left.
Terminator squads, they got 2 wounds apiece now, and things like, doing an additional wound to Magnus or Mortarion or anybody like that. Just for it's a roll. It's a 2+, and it does cost a command point, so it's a heavy price. But when you're playing an attrition game, essentially, with them, every wound could count, and you'll probably be glad you invested a couple of command points into putting 2 extra wounds on them over the course of the first couple turns.
I've gotten a lot of characters down to 1 wound, and just really wish that I was able to do something else, and then they retaliate, wipe me out, I lose the game, I go cry.
If they're full, their full capacity, something like they're coming back. Yeah,
I really like that. It's situational, as you said. It's going to be nice to be able to pop it off, but there's so many times that you find yourself needing that. God, if I could have just done 1 more wound, this whole round would have gone 20,000 points better.
It's difficult to go back and analyze your game and have it and understand that maybe it did come down to that 1 wound. I like having at least the option of maybe that not happening.
In my head, though, it always comes down to that 1 wound. You're like, oh, that 1 wound.
Well, now
it's not a
no excuse.
No excuse. Now, just to clarify for me, now, do I have to pop this off before, or can I wait until after the attack resolves?
It's a roll of die. Okay, use the stratagem after a Tyranid unit from your army fights in the fight phase.
Okay, good. So you don't have to use it ahead of time. You can use it and then decide. Okay.
Yeah, you can do all your attacks and then decide.
Okay, good.
For 2 command points, there's a stratagem called Single-Minded Annihilation.
It sounds exciting.
Sounds good.
Jeez, sounds amazing.
It's 2 command points, right? So that in itself could be a limiter, but I like to, when I'm doing an analysis of some of this stuff, I like to see, I try to look at things that affect more than just one model, and this is for a whole unit. Use the stratagem at the end of your shooting phase. This is at the end of the shooting phase. All right. Select a Tyranid infantry unit from your army. That unit can immediately shoot again. So you can, you're trying to whittle something down and take something out. You fire everything at it. It's got 2 or 3 wounds left. You know what? Okay, these guys are shooting again.
Does the Exocrine fall under that category?
It's not a Tyranid infantry.
Oh, that sucks.
Shooting 4 times would have been wonderful.
Ooh, what about those dudes that are like the mortar guys? What are the Biovores?
Yeah. Colloquially known as cows.
I've never heard them called that before.
It's a Utah thing.
Yeah, it must be. It gets cold up there. They just got to come up with stuff.
I just want to hear Ricky say it because it sounds like something that Ricky's accent would say.
The Biovores are infantry. They're Tyranid infantry units.
Oh, there might be some value in there, getting a couple extra pop shots off with those.
They got the Spore Mine Launcher, which is heavy 1. Chris, you had asked earlier about the Hive Guard, and they still do get to absorb wounds.
The Tyrant Guard?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are they any cheaper?
I'm sorry, there are Hive Guard and Tyrant Guard, as we know. But you ask about the Tyrant Guard, right?
Yeah, I was asking about the Tyrant Guard because I'm thinking again, just off of what Troop and what Ricky said. Oh, look, a walking Hive Tyrant. Shoot him first. And that goes for Swarmy or whoever.
They have the shield wall. Roll a dice for each time a friendly Hive Fleet Hive Tyrant loses a wound whilst they are within 3 inches of this unit. On a 2+, a model from this unit can intercept the hit. The Hive Tyrant does not lose a wound, but this unit suffers a mortal wound. And they have 3 wounds apiece.
It's kind of like Lookout Sirs have gotten so much more dangerous.
I mean, that's good. But at least the fact that it still exists for some of these creatures, and that is how you're going to keep your Hive Tyrant alive, I think. Even if they're flying, you could keep a couple of Tyrant Guard near them.
They just jump up in the air.
That's a great visual.
It's even more dramatic than that. It actually slides along their wing, and he just kind of like, it's like watching Tron. He just passes it down to him.
Oh, that's funny. So I'm trying to think of what would be the most comprehensive unit to use for this stratagem, though, to maximize that power. Maybe shooty Tyranid warriors.
The Hive. Sorry, what are they called? The Hive Guard. They have an assault 3 weapon.
Okay,
but then there are things like there are other things in here that have high assault type weaponry. So, moving and advancing and shooting twice, it reduces some of that penalty and you get more shots. There's a lot of assault things that have multi-shot weapons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, a big block of Tervigons. I don't know. I'm struggling in my head to see how it's a powerful stratagem. But where are we getting the bang for our buck?
Yeah, I mean, the Raveners have assault 3 weapons at 24 inches. They're strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage apiece.
Yeah, so you turn in that turns into 18 shots for two, so that's not too bad.
And Devourers are assault 3.
Yeah, I like it.
My fantasy is like a group of 3 Pyrovores just getting right in range and going to town with it. That's 3d6. Do that twice. That's some shooting.
Let me see if a Pyrovore falls into that. I don't know what a Pyrovore is.
The other one's the Flame Spurt 10-inch assault D6.
I don't think that exists anymore.
What? It's in the index?
Well, I'm not sure that anyone is going to have the same sort of reaction.
Yeah.
Okay. I was pretty sure that there would be, but I mean, from the history of the Pyrovore, long though it may be, there would be few who mourned it being gone as much as Andrew Whitaker mourned his Rough Riders.
Here we go. The Pyrovores, now that you brought them up, they do have the Flame Spurt, 10 inches, Assault D6, Strength 5, -1 AP, 1 damage, automatically hits, and they are an infantry unit.
Yep, that's strong.
That 10-inch is built to put them in one of their mycetic spores.
Yeah, that's a good point, because 9 inches? Don't get within 9 inches. Oh, guess what? We're automatically hitting you at 10. And then we're going to do it twice.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I dig it.
I'm excited. If I was going to build a Tyranid army, that would go in it.
The Voracious Appetite. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Tyranid's monster or character from your army is chosen to attack. You can reroll all failed wound rolls for that model until the end of the phase. That's 1 command point.
That's clutch.
Well, I think that it's when you're fighting big things, using the strength of some of these things. I mean, they're high strength, but you're going to want to convert. And you remember that strength 6 on toughness 5 or on toughness 4 is still needing a 3. So that reroll will play a part.
Yeah. This is what's really nice is when you get your Swarmlord or somebody in combat with Mortarion, and then you can do maximum damage to Mortarion first and hopefully take him down a notch. So when he swings back that next turn or whatever, maybe you're not getting hit as hard. So
you're still getting hit as hard. It converts into 12 attacks.
I mean, he's a bad example probably.
No, I get what you're saying though.
Your Alpha Strike is it needs to be the most effective it can be, and this is a good way to do it.
You might not get another swing at that, but then that plays right into this other stratagem, which is the Death Frenzy for 2 command points. Use this stratagem when a Tyranid character from your army is slain. The Hive Mind compels it to one final attack, and it can immediately either shoot as if it were the shooting phase or fight as if it were your fight phase before it's removed from the battlefield. So this is something that's cropping up into, under different names and different codexes, but it lets you maximize those sacrifice plays big time.
Yeah, oh, you killed me, but you only have 1 or 2 wounds left. Here's this. Yeah,
and I think you always want to bank those. I know when I was playing Grey Knights, I always wanted to bank that, what is it, in death, or not in death is duty end or something, like whatever the stratagem was. I just had it in my back pocket.
Yeah. What's his name? Valdos or whatever. He loves that one.
I bet. And then there are Hive Fleet specific stratagems in here too, which we will cover on our next show. There are a bunch of stratagems here.
Yeah, but just out of curiosity, how many different Hive Fleets are represented in the book?
There's 7.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and they work very similarly to Space Marine chapter tactics and the Craft World attributes. I shouldn't say very similar. It's the exact same. Each one of these has a Hive Fleet, the ability to take, and then if you're Battleforged, you still get the OBSEC for your troops. It works the exact same way as the rest of the codexes we've seen.
Cool. I personally, I like that because I think it for 8th edition in the balance factor, everybody has a little bit of their own flavor, but everybody also has a lot of the same stuff. It's just a different word, but it's the same thing. So that in itself is like a built-in balance to the game, which I think is why 8th edition has been as successful as it has been. Granted, we've had 2 kind of wonky editions in the past, so hey, whatever, we could just be loving that. Anything is better than 6th, and 7th definitely had its issues. But yeah, I really think that the whole balance factor that's going into the thought process behind these codexes and sharing similar rules and stuff like that it's giving balance. That's the only word I can come up with.
I want to talk quickly about the psychic powers, and I think that we might run out of time for finishing moves this week, but we will come back with 2 finishing moves next week. So I'll make that promise, or we'll do some finishing moves during the live stream for Warzone also. I think we can point out it'd be easy to have some live examples of someone that's applied some of the stuff we've talked about over these shows.
Hey, do this.
Yeah. So Psychic Scream. Now, I think we've had some pretty clear indications that Smite is going to change in some capacity. We have our suggestions about what we think the best way to go about doing that is, but the ability to do mortal wounds is creeping up in these other disciplines as well, and Psychic Scream is just that. Psychic Scream has a warp charge value of 5. If manifested, the nearest enemy unit within 18 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. So that sounds real familiar.
Sounds very Smite-ish.
Yeah. In addition, if the unit is a Psyker, roll 2 dice. If the result is higher than their leadership characteristic, randomly select one of their psychic powers. They can no longer use that psychic power.
I could live with doing that to someone. I would not want that to be done to me. Like, there are some army builds that rely so much on certain powers going off. Like, just for my own example, where I put Shield of Sanguinius on a Spartan, losing Shield of Sanguinius would totally wreck that strategy for me completely.
No kidding. Catalyst is another good one. Catalyst has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select a friendly Tyranid unit within 18 inches of the Psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. Each time that unit loses a wound, on a 5+, the damage is ignored, and the unit does not lose that wound. Helps some of these characters that can be targeted live a little bit longer.
Yeah, they're gonna get there with 33% more wounds remaining.
There's an ability that subtracts the leadership from a unit as a psychic power. And the reason where that's relevant is there are going to be things that target leadership, i.e. like Psychic Scream. That's one of the things that factor off leadership. But for morale, it could translate into a whole other lost model. I know we discussed that on the AdMech show, but it's important to point out that in and of itself, it's not a rock star ability, but it's going to combo. Well, anytime you see that, look for things you can combo with it. Take that for what it is. Onslaught. Onslaught has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select a friendly Tyranid unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. That unit can shoot this turn without suffering any penalties to its hit rolls for moving and shooting heavy weapons or advancing and shooting assault weapons. In addition, that unit can charge this turn even if it advanced, though not if it fell back.
Versatile. I like it.
Charge value is 6, so pretty reliable. You can get it off. And it's any friendly Tyranid unit within 18 inches. So it's not, doesn't have to be an infantry unit, doesn't have to be a monster. It's just any Tyranid unit. So like Old One Eye or any of the other Carnifexes. There's multiple brands of Carnifexes now broken up on their own data sleeves, which we saw that on the Warhammer community site, but that is the case here in the book.
Yeah, I would definitely like to take some time kind of looking over what the benefits of a specialized Carnifex versus a generic Carnifex profile is. Like, is it would something like and I'm spacing out on the name here, you'll have to forgive me, but a close combat Carnifex variant that's just kind of built from scratch do better? Killer. Yeah, like would a Screamer Killer do better than your generic Carnifex or a Thornback Carnifex, for example? I know that's one of the variants I think that's come back.
Paroxysm has a warp charge value of 5. If manifested, choose an enemy unit with 18 inches of Psyker. Until your next Psych phase, that unit cannot fight in the fight phase until all other units that are able to have done so. If the target unit has an ability that allows it to fight first in the fight phase, it instead fights as if it didn't have this ability. If both players have units that cannot fight until all other units have done so, then alternate choosing the units in the fight phase. So you alternate like you alternate anything else. But I think taking away that strike first ability, things like Berserkers will tear through some gaunts. Believe it. But they won't. They're Paroxysm.
Yeah, there's nothing like being able to just kind of take the oomph out of an enemy unit's charge. Especially, like for me, I want to charge the unit of Genestealers. I don't want to be charged. I want to charge it with something that is going to whittle those numbers down and eliminate the potential punch for that. And that's going to be the combat that I'm going to choose to go first before it gets interrupted, right?
Well, Berserkers might have been, yeah, I think you've hit it on the head, but might have been a bad example on my part. But you're being the owning player in the charge phase, you're still going to be able to dictate which unit fights when it does. But you will if something with this cast on them will not get that automatic go first. You're going to have to prioritize it to have it go first. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How long does that ability last? Is it just that assault phase
until your next psychic phase?
So you could almost use that as just a charge deterrent. You know, if you're not going to charge them, but you know, like a unit that would charge, like an assault unit coming at you, you could put that on them and really deter that unit from actually pulling off that assault, because they may not want to charge if they're not going to get that initial hit. It may not, may not be worth it. So maybe you don't have the unit to really withstand that charge, but you got the ability there. You hit them with it, and then maybe they don't want to risk it. So it's a good counter charge in itself.
I think you're right. Yeah, anytime you're making, again, it goes back to when you're making the enemy make decisions. They may make the wrong one, and if you get in their head, then you get them playing your game, and that's how you win games. That's one of the ways you can win games, is being in control of the momentum of the game.
Or you just give me a beer, and then I'm not paying attention. That's usually how you beat me.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I'm not even hinting here. I'm telling you people how to get an easy win. Just pay attention.
Well, just get paired up against Ricky, period.
Yeah, pretty much. My list design will pretty much do all your work for you.
All the heavy lifting is poor choices at the list design phase.
I'm just going for sportsmanship here, people.
Well, guys, thank y'all for joining me during our first part of the Tyranid coverage. Next week, I think, is going to be another big week. We'll obviously have some tournament prep going on. We will have more Tyranid coverage. And then, like I said, look for us on the live streams. And this is also on YouTube and stuff if you prefer to watch it or listen to it or want to have different areas to consume this. Anyway, I really appreciate y'all hanging in here with me for this part. And I hope you enjoyed the interview with Guy. That was a joy for us to do. Next week, we're going to go over more of the point values in the Codex and talk about some of the units that we haven't talked about before and some of the Hive Fleet specific combinations.
Pumped.
Sounds good.
See you guys next week.
Cheers.
Good night.
Why is the rum gone?